This is the Media Police Post, broadcasting from the Fort Hall School of Government. In this show, we police the state of truth in the Republic because truth is communicated to us by journalists and analysts. We have made it our civic duty to put it to the test. We advance from two confirmed truths about the media. One, and according to Roger Stone, the media is either lazy or evil. And for the most part, it is both evil and lazy. That is why their truth must be put to a test.
And two, that journalism is verified gossip. In fact, what is presented to us as news analysis is gossip that has been verified by journalists. This gossip has to be ground-truthed. We will assess the state of truth in what they submit to the Republic, and we will pass verdict on what is true and what is not. For the record, we are not journalists. We are thinkers. We are not lazy or evil, and we do not verify gossip. What we give you is the truth that sets you free.
On today's show, we will discuss ideas that reflect unformed and uninformed opinions, and ideas that made you stupid. Narratives that fell into the cognitive trap of we see things as we are and not as they are. Narratives based on conjecture history and those that smack of envelope journalism. Welcome to and welcome MC Squared.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
Now, dear Kikuyus, it is exactly 100 years since the colonizers gave you the economic head start you needed to dominate Kenya's trade and commerce. If it wasn't for the Devonshire paper of 1923, you Kikuyus would not be where you are now. That's a fact of history. Now, it would seem William RUTO has renewed the Devonshire contract and given you a generous 30% shareholding in his government. But before I tell you why RUTO has renewed the Devonshire paper, let me tell you a little bit about the Devonshire paper of 1923. In 1923, the Colonial Secretary, Victor Christian William Cavendish, the Duke of Devonshire, published the white paper regarding the status of all settlers and natives in the colony of Kenya.
Yeah.
He called it the Devonshire White Paper. The essence of the paper was to prioritize the interests of Africans over other races, not because they really cared about the natives, but because they needed a way to stop the Indian community from accessing the White Highlands.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the aim of the paper was the part on labor. It read, as regards labor, the native should be effectively and economically free to work in accordance with his own wish, either in production in the reserves or as an individual producer upon his own plot of land.
Yeah.
And herein was where the Kikuyus got the head start. At the time, 7 out of 10 adult males in Kiambu working for European cash crop farmers were Kikuyu. They initially grew cash crops for white settlers, but suddenly got the freedom to grow it themselves. As a result, the coffee laborer that worked on the Muzungu farm was allowed to grow his own coffee. And this is how Kikuyus monopolized Kenya's first cash crops, coffee and tea. If it wasn't for coffee and tea, Kikuyu capital wouldn't have graduated to what it is today.
Yeah.
Back to Kikuyus having 30% shareholding in RUTO's government. What RUTO has given Kikuyus is a blank check. National Treasury Minister, Gema.
Yes.
Trade and Industry Minister, Gema. Agriculture Minister, Gema.
Yes.
Water Minister, Gema.
Gema.
Lands Minister, Gema. Interior Minister, Gema. Attorney General, Gema. And to top it off, the second in command, Gema. What this means is that RUTO has entrusted all three factors of production to Kikuyus. Land, capital, and traders have been put in the hands of Kikuyu ministers.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the message therein is for you Kikuyus, or if you Kikuyu suffer, do not blame RUTO. Blame your ministers. Well done, Bonarais. You've kept your word.
He really did. And talking of Kikuyus again, in his article today in the Standard, Professor Macharia Munene tries to explain why Mount Kenya voted for RUTO against Uhuru's wishes. He discusses what he calls the Tomondo Rebellion in Mount Kenya. And he says that Uhuru was so focused on his legacy that he forgot his own people, or Tomondo. When the Tomondo felt rejected, they could not reach Uhuru to tell him their problems. Their alternative became the one and the only William RUTO. Another problem, according to Professor Monene, is that Uhuru's advisors told him that he could tell Tumondo what to do. To support his argument, Prof. Monene turns to history.
Yes.
He says the Tumondo rebellion can be explained using two things,
Yes.
the Iregi tradition and the Kyoto principle.
Okay.
The Iregi tradition was advanced from a generation that rejected a one-man rule. Instead, the Iregi generation chose to be led by a Kyama or a council of elders. The Kyama was in turn supposed to implement the Kyoto principle, a system of governance in which involved justice, fairness, and maturity.
Yes.
Having said that, I would like to differ with Professor Monene on some points. While he is right about the Mount Kenya rebellion against Uhuru, his use of history as an anchor is wrong. I say this because Mount Kenya did not vote according to historically known patterns in this election.
Right.
When Mount Kenya has been faced with a choice between two candidates, both from Mount Kenya, as it was with Matha and Gachagua, they divide their vote by giving 33% to one candidate
Yes.
and 66% to the other candidate.
Yes.
This election, however, Mount Kenya gave Gachagua and RUTO 76% and gave Matha and Raila only 21%.
Yes.
If the voting pattern in this election defied history, how is it possible that history can explain the Tumondo rebellion? If indeed the rebellion cannot be anchored in history, we would like to give an alternative.
Yes.
In our view, Professor Monene ignores the importance of the hustler versus dynasty conversation as the kingmaker in this year's election.
Oh, yes.
Allow me to explain. The hustler nation was created on this desk from scratch. We called RUTO a chicken seller, although he was selling eggs at the Biro pens on the streets after Form 4. And we did all this to defeat the establishment or the dynasties.
Yes.
The result of the hustler conversation is that it led to ethnic suicide.
Yes.
It is our opinion that the rebellion in Mount Kenya was anchored on the hustler narrative, not history. Simply put, tribe did not matter in this election.
Yeah.
Poverty did. And Professor Monene cannot explain this using history.
Yes.
Why? Because there is no history to this.
Yes.
It is being written.
Lovely.
Wow. Okay, so I want to continue the hustler versus dynasty conversation and ask a very simple question. Who does President Ruto serve? The hustlers or the dynasties? And my thoughts today are inspired by an article from The Elephant by Claire Nasike titled GMOs, Entrenching Kenya's Food Insecurity. In her article, Nasika argues that, and I quote, the decision to lift the GMO ban undermines our food and seed sovereignty and delegates the control of our food production systems to profit-driven multinational corporations, end quote. I know that was Kizungu Kimingi, so let me put it very simply for you. When President Ruto allowed the GMO crops back into country, he acted for the benefit of dynasties and not the hustlers. In fact, he didn't just act against their interests. He may have, as Nasike infers, condemned the hustlers to even greater poverty. First, GMO crops do raise yield and profit for farmers, yes. But as Nasike argues, the GMO crops do not work with our way of farming, and that is why they are bad. In Kenya, 80% of our farms are small-scale farmers. Right now, our farmers control the seeds that they plant.
Yes.
And if we start using GMO crops, they will lose this ability. It means that to plant even an acre of maize, our farmers will need to buy seeds where before they were free. This raises the cost of farming and therefore food. Thinking about the bigger picture, GMO crops mean that a foreign company will tell Kenyans what to plant, when to plant it, where to plant it, and how they can plant it. And if they don't listen, they will pay these companies billions. For example, In 2019, a Brazilian court sided with Monsanto, an American company that produces GMO seeds, when they sued Brazilian farmers for saving their seeds and replanting them for the next season. By the way, this is a very common practice among farmers.
Yeah.
As a result, Brazilian farmers had to pay Bayer, Monsanto's parent company, 1 trillion shillings, or a third of Kenya's national budget, a debt that will take the over 80,000 small-scale farmers close to 20 years to pay off. Explain to me how a similar fate would benefit our hustlers. Explain to me how mortgaging our country to the colonizers benefits hustlers. If the consequences of GMO crops are therefore well known, why then would President Ruto reverse the ban? Especially when GMOs were banned in 2012 because the government was unsure of how they would affect people's stomachs and wallets. And especially because Ruto did not say a word about GMOs on the campaign trail, nor was it in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. Therefore, why would one of his first acts as president be to reverse this ban? It might be because Ruto has always championed GMO crops. In Kibaki's administration, when he was the Minister for Agriculture, he supported the controversial biosafety bill that introduced GMOs to Kenya. And in 2015, as the deputy president, he championed the reversal of the 2012 ban. But this does not explain why he reversed the ban as president. It just explains his history. Now, I have a couple of theories. This might be a part of President Ruto's plan to create a new political elite. It might be possible. GMOs, as I have said, increases yield and increases the amount of profits you make. Therefore, they're a very efficient avenue for making billions. Or perhaps President Ruto realized that while the hustlers got him elected, it is the dynasties that will keep him in power. And so he must serve the interests of the dynasties while speaking about the interests of his hustlers. Or are the reasons for reversing the ban more personal? Matiang'i revealed that Ruto owns at least 17,000 acres of farmland, roughly 4,500 times more land than the average small-scale farmer. And by the way, this is just what we know Ruto owns. These large farms are the kind of farms with the money that will benefit from GMO crops. And we know that historically the presidency is a money-making enterprise. Just ask Ruto's political father, Moi. And remember, I'm just asking questions. Thank you so much for joining us on the Media Police Post. See you next Monday, and columnists, you have been put on notice.
God bless.